All right. Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. Remember, I mentioned on Thursday about Sharon. She had to reschedule. She had this morning. She had some emergency, so we had to reschedule her meeting. So once we come back from holidays, I'll try to schedule something maybe for later. Try to do it around project time so we have more time. But she won't be here today, so we'll start our lesson. Okay. So anybody excited? React is here. Yeah. All right. So finally, React did. What is it? You didn't pretend? Yeah, yeah, you should be excited. This is all it kind of comes down to. We've been studying and we've been doing, so it kind of comes down to this. All right. Oh my god. Oh, the attendance looks kind of nice today. What's going on? Nobody wants to learn React. All right. Huh? What is it?
Everybody started vacation early.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with React today. Okay. So few things. Again, these are not part, but it's kind of like a more historical thing, and I like to. Before I'm using something, I kind of go back, do some research, and see what's going on. So React was released in 2013, okay, from Facebook. Before React in 2010, there was AngularJS. You guys heard about AngularJS or Angular, right? So Angular is from Google, and in 2010, they came out with this framework that kind of revolutionized the web development, single page application. How do you make website, right? It became super popular, and everybody jumped on Angular. And Angular, everybody learned Angular, they loved it, and from 2010 onward, Angular became one of the most. It was almost close to like the trend came around when jQuery was there. So that's how Angular was in the beginning of 2010, 12, 13, and it was going strong. So then React was introduced in 2013. So React is from Facebook, and they came up with their own kind of similar thing, like similar ideas and what it does. But they were like 3 years late. Everybody had joined. Everybody was going to the party that Google was throwing with AngularJS, and React is that one kid who's like, "Hey," and nobody is like paying attention. It was buggy. It had a learning curve, and nobody was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." Facebook is trying to come into this party, and nobody was paying attention. And then Angular is getting strong. They started doing regular conferences. They called it. It still goes on. It's called ngconf, and they're introducing Angular, going strong, strong, strong. And 2016 comes along, and Google is like, oh, we're going to, you go to a party, people are used to that venue, everybody loves it. Google is like, we're going to make this party even bigger. They're like, okay, we're going to make Angular 2, and it's going to be super good. Everybody is going to love it, and everybody is excited. 2016 comes along. When they launch it, everybody, they're like, oh, here's Angular 2, and it's like the venue has been changed, and they're like, what the hell is this? They're like, yeah, this is Angular 2. Well, it does not look anything similar to Angular 1. Yeah, exactly, we ditched Angular 1 and we came up with this new language. What we have invested 6 years in learning and getting used to Angular 1. Companies have they have reworked their solutions. What's going to happen to Angular 1? They're like, no, there were some bad practices in Angular 1, and this is much better. So we want everybody to start using Angular 2. And if you look at Angular 2, it's completely different syntax. It has absolutely very less relationship with Angular 1. Okay, nobody liked that, and that's when React saw the opportunity, and they were like, oh, guys, look at us, we are never going to do this. We are a stable library, and we are never going to do this. You can rely on us. We are never going to change our language so drastically that you have to relearn everything. So, well, Google is kind of freaked out later on, and they're like, oh, okay, you know what, don't worry about it, we're going to release some tools that you can take your Angular 1 code and convert into Angular 2, right? They came up with these tools, but it was kind of already late, and everybody was not happy. The biggest thing is, when somebody has invested so much time and money, especially from the production perspective, from company perspective, what they saw was Angular is not reliable. That Google can go and do something else. What's going to happen to their product that they have invested so much? So because Google said, oh, eventually we are going to sunset Angular 1 and we won't be supporting it. Again, bad move. Later on, they said, no, 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 Angular 1 is still here to stay. We are going to keep releasing new version, but it's kind of already too late. So whatever the factor was, some of the things were just to piss off Google. People converted their apps to React, and React took that opportunity. And today, React is set to, in my opinion, is set to become the jQuery of our world, of our time. What I mean by this, like, if you look at some legacy code today, any website, you will find jQuery, like 15 years code, right? 15 years from now, the next generation of web developers, engineers are going to look at our code and they'll see React all over, right? That's how popular it has become. Everybody is jumping on React, and they have started using React, their websites on React. So it's pretty clear that React is probably going to be the jQuery, that how popular jQuery was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That's what React is almost set to become. Angular, they have promised once they release Angular 2, I think we are on Angular version number 8, but it's very similar to Angular 2. They have promised every 6 months they're going to release a new features, but they are never going to do what they did from Angular 1 and Angular 2. But in my opinion, it's kind of already too late, and they have kind of lost that traction. And so we used to do a full stack called MEAN. It was MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node.js. It slowly has been replaced with MERN now. So it's MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. Okay, so AngularJS still out there, people still use it, but the popularity has kind of slowed down, kind of gone down. React is more popular. Again, from 2013 to today, I would accept that React has put in a lot of time, lot of effort. They have made their framework as easy as possible. Back like 3 years ago, it was really challenging to set up a React app. I'm not joking. I have done it. It was not pleasant. It had a lot of learning curve. You had to install. There were some nuances. You had to know how to make it work and all that stuff. But today, they have really improved their process. It has streamed down so much that just with one line, you can create a whole React app. Just with one npx command, you can have a whole React app ready. It's compatible. It's even compatible with IE. Okay, they have made sure it works with all possible browsers. They have come a long way from 2013. Again, the version that you're going to look at React today is it's less challenging. There's a learning curve, but it's not. They have reduced the learning curve. They have tried to make it as easy as possible. Their documentation is really good. They have put in a lot of time and effort. Okay, but opportunity was there. They took that opportunity, and it's not like they are doing it, because everybody wants to piss off Google. But they did put a lot of effort. So if you work in React in today versus like 3 years ago, you will see a lot of difference. Okay. All right. So, but what do they say? React says that they are a JavaScript library. Once we look at the code, you will see that it's more than a library, but they still say that that React is a JavaScript library. Okay. When we say JavaScript library, React is saying that they only deal with the front end. They do not bother with the back end. They have nothing to do with the back end. All they focus is on the front end. Okay. Now, with that being said, they have really nice integration with our Node.js code. With even it's not just Node.js, you could do Java, C Sharp, anything, but they have super easy integration with the backend. They have put in an effort over there, but they don't advertise themselves as that. But they still say, we are still a JavaScript library, so we focus on the front end. So that's what they call themselves. But you will see when we go to the code, when we plug in our backend, when we come back from holidays, you will see that kind of seamlessly integrates into a React app. Okay, it is so much so popular that you search for some. Let's say you are looking for some authentication, right? You did Passport.js, so you would search for authentication in JavaScript. Okay, the second term you would search is authentication. How do I include authentication in React? Okay, you will find that people have created libraries for JavaScript, and then they have created packages just for React app. That's how popular React is. That they're like, oh, JavaScript, if you're making a JavaScript app, pure JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, here's a library. Oh, but if you're working on React, hey, try this. We have made a separate special library for React. Easy to plug in, easy to use. That's how popular React has become. That people are releasing packages and libraries that are only focused on React. Everything else, and then React. That's how they do it. So authentication, Bootstrap. I'll go through some of them. All of them have their own version, and then they have a React version. That's how we can see that how popular React is becoming, that nobody wants to get left out of that party now. So they make sure that libraries that they release, they have a version, they have a flavor that kind of plugs in with React a lot more easily, so that you can start using without any more looking around and trying to see how to use this library with React. Okay, code examples, a lot of support is available for React. Okay, um, so but one thing we need to understand and we need to realize that these libraries kind of come in, go out. 2010, Angular was the boss, and nobody thought anything is going to happen to that and it's going to stay. But 2019, it's almost kind of faded away. Again, it's still probably one of the more top libraries used framework. So there's React, there's Angular, there's a third one called Vue.js. That's also popular, but that usually is like number three. People who hate Facebook, people who hate Google, they start to use Vue.js. Okay, it's an independent library, but kind of serves the same purpose. But all of these frameworks, all of these libraries have some core concepts that are always going to be there. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is beneath everything, what is there? JavaScript. JavaScript is here. Everything beneath everything is JavaScript. That's why I say that you have to make sure that you are really advanced in JavaScript. You need to know JavaScript. These things will come, will go, but JavaScript is here, right? The only thing that has been constant throughout the years has been JavaScript. Again, it's not that they are stagnant. JavaScript makes sure they are releasing versions, so they are kind of up to date. So that's why nobody has said, "Oh, is there something that we can replace JavaScript with?" It's a more that they have introduced new features and everything. So JavaScript is up to date. So I don't see it going away anytime soon. So JavaScript is still here, but these things they will come 5 years, 10 years. Maybe there's some other library, but everything is still based on JavaScript. Okay, so you need to understand React also. The code that React is going to generate, not the code that you're going to write. The code that you're going to generate is still going to be JavaScript. Okay, and it's going to be not even ES6 JavaScript. It's going to be ES5. Again, why is it going to be ES5? It has to run on IE. If you generate a code that is going to be ES6 JavaScript, it's not going to run on IE. And still, we have a lot of people, a lot of customers that still use Internet Explorer. So if that's the audience, you need to make sure that your website works on IE as well. And React has taken this opportunity and they've ensured that it is going to run on IE as well. And I'll show you what they do and how they do it. It's good to know. You don't have to understand everything, but from the concept wise, you need to know how they're doing it. And how do they make sure that it works on IE or any previous browser that runs on ES5? Okay, because one thing is for sure, ES5 version of JavaScript is 100% supported. Every single browser, any version has ES5 support. ES6 not 100%, but ES5 100%. Okay, so if you want your website to be reached 100%, you need to make sure it is using ES5 version. Okay. All right. Now, before we jump into coding and everything, again, I'm going to go over some concepts that React uses. I'm going to identify those concepts. It is absolutely important that you understand those concepts first. Okay. Again, these concepts are not from React. React only uses them. And I'll go through them and I'll explain what it means. Okay, the first thing is that React is famous for its components. Okay, React prides itself that it divides the UI into components. Okay, every single thing that you see over here, React suggests that you break it down into component. Okay, what is a component? It's a small piece of whatever you see on the screen. Okay, for example, the header. The header that you see over here, React is saying that that's a component. Okay, the side menu that you see over here, that's another component. The chat over here that you see, that is could be another component. The news feed that you see in the middle, that's another component. All the ads over here, these are another components. It could be that this header component has further components. So it could have this search. This could be a component as well. These could be components in itself. So React is saying that when you're creating a UI, make sure you break every single thing down into a component. Okay. Again, that's not like a React concept. The concept has always been there, but React has implemented it very well, and they kind of force you, or they kind of make you think in that direction. Okay. So when you're creating your website, when you have your layout in your mind, you need to see how you can break these things down into smaller components. And when I say smaller components, this means that every component's code, there is a separate piece of code for every single component. There is a separate code for this, there's a separate code for this, separate code for this component, separate code for this, separate code for this. Okay? Eventually, in your main page, these components are going to come and embed themselves. Remember handlebars? That's what handlebars does, right? You have a main body, and then all your smaller handlebar are coming together and putting themselves. This is the same thing with components. So all these components are eventually going to come over here and then put themselves over here. Okay? React takes care of that. We'll see how do we do that. But the main important thing is React is based on components. So we need to make sure that when we are developing an app using the React way, we make sure that we have good components. Each of these are individual components. Okay. Now, why do we need these components? React says that if you have individual components, it will be easier to test them, easier to debug, easier to work on. If you have a team of like 10 people working on, every single person could be working on a different component independent of everybody else. Okay, I could be responsible for the header without worrying about if this is going to work. Somebody else could be worried about employee list without worrying about this component over here. Okay, reusability. You make a component header just once and that's it. And then you can use this component in your other pages, even in your other apps. You just have to copy that component over. Okay. This component over here, reusable. If you go to any other page on Facebook, you would be able to see this component without writing any extra code. You can just keep reusing those components. Okay. So build once and then reuse those components. That's how your components should be. Okay. For example, a button. You come up with a custom button that is only for your organization. That is a component. Okay. And then Anybody else who comes in, they could just call that component and then keep using the same style. They don't have to worry about the CSS. They don't have to worry about how it is working, how it is coming on the page. They just need to know how to reuse this component. Okay, so that's what React says, that if you have everything in components, you can reuse them, easier to test. We'll talk about testing at some point. Um, Easier to debug as well, right? If there's any problem going on with component, you can isolate that component. Instead of worrying about the whole page, you can only look at that component, figure out what the issue is, if it's a CSS issue, JavaScript issue, whatever that issue is. Okay, instead of worrying about is this error happening over here, over here, over here. Okay, now in production environment, once you fix that component, once you deploy it, you can be 100% sure that I'm only changing a single component, everything else remains the same. So you don't have to worry about, oh, do I need to retest every single thing now? Am I breaking something? You're not, because your component is isolated. You have made only changes to that. You're going to write some test cases and test that component and make sure that component is working. Eventually, your whole page is going to be, there won't be any change unless you have made any other changes to the components. Okay? Now, that was the first thing. I'll write it down. Components. Okay. Again, this concept is not something that React coined. It's the concept has always been there, but React has been really good at implementing this concept above components. Okay, they have made sure your UI is divided into components, and that's how they have structured their code, and that's how they standardize it. That's how they suggest making React apps. Okay. Any questions about components? Okay, it's a logical division of your website. Basically, if you have a layout in front of you, you're going to make logical decisions saying, oh, this could be a one component, this could be a component, this could be a component, this could be a component. That's all components are. Questions? No? Good. Okay. The second concept that React uses is called virtual DOM. Okay, we'll talk about that. Again, this is also not coined by React or Facebook. There have been white papers about it. Somebody has already talked about this, but React has really implemented it really well. Okay, and we'll talk about what that is. Now, we'll go back to week 3, week 4, when we talked about JavaScript and jQuery. Okay, if you want to make your website dynamic, right, what do we need? JavaScript, right? JavaScript is the only language that your browser supports that makes your websites more dynamic, right? HTML, CSS, static website. Dynamic website, you need JavaScript. Okay. Now, how does JavaScript makes your website dynamic? Like, what is it doing that makes your website dynamic? What is it? From the database? No, I'm talking about the front end. There's no back end. So I'm saying that, yeah, I'm saying that JavaScript makes it more dynamic. How does it do it? And Chris, change the DOM. That's what Chris is saying, right? So remember, DOM manipulation. That's the number one thing, and that's how JavaScript makes it more dynamic, right? JavaScript ports itself into the DOM. Okay, and what is DOM? Document Object Model. That is the representation of your HTML basically in memory. Okay, it goes ahead, it pulls that representation of HTML inside its code, does something, and that's how you see that it's more dynamic, right? Your button color is changing, something is happening, more rows are being added, rows are being deleted, all that stuff that you see on the UI is being done. The only way is DOM manipulation. Okay, now when it comes to React, you have seen React apps, they are also dynamic. So what do you think is happening? The same thing. Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah, we'll come to that, but it is manipulating the DOM. We need to understand that, right? Even if a React app is making some changes, what are they doing? At the bottom, they are manipulating the DOM, right? That's the only way you can make a website dynamic, right? Now, what does jQuery do? jQuery does the same thing, right? It manipulates the DOM. Right now, how does jQuery works? So you have a jQuery library, you use some of their methods. What jQuery does is, as soon as you make a change, it goes ahead and updates the DOM, right? That's what jQuery does. Now, updating the DOM can be expensive and slow, even though it makes your website more dynamic, but you can see it kind of makes it slow as well. It can. Okay, if you have a lot more UI elements on your website and you go ahead and update the DOM, what happens? In memory, you're basically changing the whole HTML. What should happen? Your browser should go ahead and render the whole HTML again. Why? Because there's an old HTML, you manipulated the DOM, now there's a new HTML. That's how your page should be looking like, right? So what does it do? It goes in and renders the whole HTML. Same thing, that's what jQuery does. There are 10 UI elements on your web page, and you go ahead and change one of them. What jQuery is going to do? Eventually, it's going to load the whole page again. It's going to go back, it's going to reload, it's going to update the DOM, and all of your UI components are going to be updated. Okay, that's how jQuery works, right? Um, Now, anybody remember what is the data structure that DOM uses to represent the HTML? Kind of looks like this. What is it? Tree. Yes. So DOM is behind the scenes. DOM is represented in a data structure called trees. Okay. What does tree means? It tells you what the next node is and how the elements are. So these nodes are basically your elements. So this could be a p tag. P tag could be tagged to a div or whatever. Okay. This is how this is represented. Okay. Now, when you work with jQuery, if you have to change this element over here, okay, everything else remains the same. jQuery is going to eventually update this, everything. It's going to re-render the whole DOM, and your whole page is going to be updated. It's okay, but that's how jQuery works. Okay. The only downside is if you have a lot more components, a lot more UI elements, eventually your website is going to get slower. Okay. If you have read some research, attention span for a user on a website is like less than 2 seconds or something. If it doesn't come up in 2 seconds, you would close your browser. That's it. There are studies. The attention span of anybody is really, really in seconds. So your website has to be faster. Make sure it loads up. At least shows something. Like gives you a placebo effect that something is happening. Okay. So now this kind of library kind of makes it slower. So React came up with reuse the concept of virtual DOM. Okay. So eventually your DOM has to be updated, right? There is no other way. If you're using JavaScript, no matter what framework it is, if you want to make it more dynamic, eventually the conclusion is your web page, your DOM, the original DOM has to be updated, right? There is no other way that there's going to be any dynamic content on your site, okay? But what React does is, before your original DOM, it creates another DOM over here, and they call it virtual DOM. Okay. This they call it virtual DOM because this is the copy of the original DOM in memory. That's why they call it virtual, right? It doesn't exist physically anywhere, just like the DOM. It's something they're making a copy of it. Now, why are they making a copy of it? What React does is when you have your React app, when you make any changes to any of those components on your website, let's suppose you have these 4 components, okay, and you updated this component, right? In a regular website, what should happen? It should go to the DOM, update that element, reload this, and your web page is updated. Okay. What React does is it updates the virtual DOM. Okay, again, virtual DOM is just a copy of the original DOM that React has in its part. Okay, now when you update your web page, update your component, it does not modify the original DOM. Instead, it goes ahead and modifies the virtual DOM. Okay, for example, for these 4 elements, you are only updating the first one. It's going to make a point to remember that you have modified this component. Okay, once all your updates are done, once React has realized you are done with your update, then what it does is it has some algorithms behind the scenes that it compares the virtual DOM with your regular DOM. Okay, and then sees what has changed. Okay, now in this case only this component has changed. So what React would do is it is going to make sure that only a single element, single component on your UI, that's the only thing that gets updated. Everything else remains the same. Okay, how does it do it? Again, they have algorithm behind the scenes. Remember, all your DOM is in a tree structure. So in the tree, it determines exactly which node changed and makes sure that in your original DOM, everything else remains the same. Only the single element in your tree is updated. Okay, what is the advantage? It makes it more faster to load your website. Again, versus jQuery. jQuery, you make a change, it is going to update the whole DOM. It's going to reload the whole page. It's going to reload every single element in your UI. With React, it updates the virtual DOM. Okay, when this is done, it makes a comparison and only makes sure the single element, single UI component, that's the only thing that gets updated. Everything else remains the same. Okay, so instead of everything updated, a single thing is being updated. So it makes it more faster, okay, more efficient. Okay, so that's the concept of virtual DOM. Now, again, virtual DOM is not something that React came up with. This has been there for a while. It has been in study. It has been a concept. Okay, but React took that concept and made an implementation, and they have implemented it really well. Now, behind the scenes, yes, they have their own proprietary algorithm that kind of makes the comparison, does it efficiently, and makes sure exactly a single one is being updated. All that stuff, that's React owned. Okay, but the concept, virtual DOM, that's the concept. The concept is that you have a copy or you have a virtual DOM in front of the regular DOM, which has all the updates, and then you make a comparison between those two and make sure that only the one that has been updated in your virtual DOM gets updated instead of every single thing getting updated. Let me. So it kind of looks something like this in a React app. Okay, so you have your components. All of those components in a React app are talking to the virtual DOM. They do not talk to the real DOM at all. Okay, any updates that you are making, anything that you are changing on your UI components, behind the scene, all of them are being changed in your virtual DOM. Okay, and then once those changes are done, what do I mean by done? This means that when React thinks that you are done with your changes, it is time to update the real DOM. It makes a comparison between this and exactly finds out from this how many components have been updated, and it makes sure only those components get updated. Everything else remains the same. Okay, you will see this. This is the foundation for single page applications. You remember what are single page applications? If you look at the header, remember back in the day when you used to go to a next page, you would get a blank white screen and then the whole page loads. These days, if you go to a website, you will see the header still remains the same. There's no change over there. Your content in the middle is kind of changing. Okay, those are called single page applications, right? Those are exactly what this is doing. There's a component, your header component, that does not require change anymore. Okay, so it stays the same. Anything over here, the content, that is changing because you had updated something. You went to a next page, you clicked your contact page or something. Okay, in this case, the header, there's no change required in the header. So the header you will see is kind of looks like static, doesn't change anything, but your contents over here are changing. Okay, it makes it faster, and it's, to be honest, more visually pleasing. That I know that it's there. I mean, it's kind of redundant. Why do I need to reload my header every single time I go to a different page? Okay, that is a foundation. Those are called SPAs, SPAs, or single page applications. Okay, basically you have a single page. Remember, there's only one page, index.html, just like our handlebars. Remember, you have main handlebars and everything kind of comes and embeds themselves into it. So that's where the term is coming from. It's a single page, and the components are coming and loading themselves into that page. That's why they're called single page applications. Okay, again, virtual DOM. That's what React uses it, and that's make it more efficient and more faster to load. Okay. Um, are you guys like this? Yeah. Okay. So, questions before whatever I talked about, it's visually there. So remember I was talking about the tree structure. That's how it is. So, this is your in-memory or virtual DOM, right? This is the real one. So React, whenever there's an update, it's making an update to a DOM, but not the real DOM. It's making an update to its own virtual DOM. Okay, and then later on, once you are done, that's where the comparison happens. React does all that comparison for you. It compares the virtual DOM with the real DOM and sees which of these have been updated. So out of these 6 components, only one of them was updated. So instead of loading all 6 of them, it is going to go ahead and only update a single one. Okay, and that's why it makes it more efficient, makes the loading time faster, because you're not updating, reloading the whole page. You're only reloading or updating a single component within your page. Okay, again, this is only possible if your page has components. So you see how those kind of two tie in. That's why they stress that you should have uh, divided into different components, so it's easier for React to only update components and not the whole thing. Okay, but if you have your whole page is a single component, what's going to happen? Your whole page is going to load, because to React it's still a component, so it's going to reload the whole thing. So that's why React stresses and make sure you have good logical components in your website. Okay. All right. Questions. Oops. Hold on. All right. Questions. We covered 2 things: components and virtual DOM. Any questions on it? Again, these are extremely important concepts. So you need to make sure you guys understand what is a virtual DOM, what is it doing. Okay. Again, React only is using that concept. The concept has been there. Anybody else can go ahead and implement it. But the logic, the algorithm that makes the comparison, that's where React kind of shines through. Yes. Hmm?
What's the implication of like routing? Does that also work the same?
What do you mean work the same?
I mean, like if you get a new routing, it
Uh-huh.
loads a new page.
Right. So again, your pages are not pages anymore. They're components, right? So there's only one page, which is index.html. Okay. When you go to a new page, basically you are saying that load my new components into this page. So your old components are going away and your new components are coming into that page. So it's still a component. No, I'm saying there are multiple files, but there's only one index.html. Yes. And everything else is a component. So you still have smaller things, but when you see the code, you will have only one index.html.
Um, I think I might have an idea of what you're getting at. Like,
Okay.
you open your page and that's like your index route that loads your page. But like when you click a button or something to go to something else, you're hitting like an API route or something, not
Right.
a new page route.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But that's
Yeah. Okay. So going to a new page and loading. So again, we'll take a look at it when we have multiple pages. You will see how those are divided into components and how do you roll it. They have again a little bit jumping ahead. React has support for router. It's called React Router, and they have they have created the library exactly for this purpose. So it makes the routing easier. So they control everything. So they can make sure if your new page is loading, how do they make those components and make it more efficient? We'll take a look at that out as well. Okay. Yes, Raymond.
So is that kind of the downside of it, where, I mean, if you're practically loading an entirely new page, it kind of lose.
When are you loading the new page?
Well, I mean, you're not, but I mean,
Yeah.
if it's almost entirely different,
Uh huh.
but a few things, then it's kind of almost not really benefiting.
Well, no, it's still beneficial versus, if your page is basically you're saying if you have a new page which does not use any single component that has been loaded in a previous page, right? That would be a new page, right? So you have like 5 components on your one page, and your second page you have 5 more which are absolutely not the same as the previous one, right? Yes. If any framework that you use, you will have to load that the first time. But once it is loaded, within those 5 components, if you make a change to one of them, only one of them gets loaded after that.
I guess what I'm saying is, so like, let's say you have like 18 components on a page.
Yes. Okay.
And you read them, like, the new page
Yes.
is 17
Yes.
components.
Uh-huh.
Kind of
Right. In that case, because it's going to load all those 17 components the first time. Okay. That's going to happen first time with every single framework, right? But what you're getting the benefit is out of those 17. Yeah, after those 17, if one of them gets updated or 2 or 5, then it's not going to load all 17 of them. Yeah. Yeah. Eventually, I mean, the first time, yes, you have to load all your components. And then after that, yes, that's how it would be. Okay. Again, when you're loading those components, you're actually not making changes or you're not manipulating the DOM as much. That's the first time you're loading. That's going to happen with jQuery, JavaScript. The page is going to load. Yeah.
It's not as beneficial if you're
Changing a lot of stuff, yes. Again, it is still beneficial compared to jQuery or something.
I guess it's like that's just an outlier.
Yeah, if that's what if your every single thing is updating, yeah. Right. But still, it's still going to be a little bit faster than using jQuery or something. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other question? Okay. Again, understand that React is a JavaScript library. It only deals with the front end code. Okay. If you want to make an HTTP request or AJAX request, we need something else. Okay. That is not included in React. There are libraries that are there now. We will take a look at it. But from a pure React perspective, they only deal with the front end. Okay. Your components, your UI, they don't deal with making API calls. Of course, we'll see how do we do that, but React doesn't really deal with those kind of things. We'll have to add something extra, make sure, see how do we do that. But within React, it's a front end JavaScript library. Okay.
That's how like we do it now.
That is what.
That's how like we do it now.
If you're using jQuery, it comes with the Ajax call, right?
Yeah.
$.ajax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, we have to use Exodus or something like that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So basically, React is gonna be the cool version of Hello World.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot more cooler version of handlebars. You will see what we'll talk about handlebars and what it does not allow, and we'll see how it handles all those stuff. Okay. Now there are 2 things that React uses. Again, if you were working on React like 2 years ago, you would really have to understand these 2 things because you would have to set those things up, right? But today, after a year or so, the React team, Facebook realized, this is kind of a setup that everybody has to go through. So they have not incorporated all these things into their package. If you use their app, the way we are going to show you, I'm going to show you how to create that app. Everything is bundled into it. From the concept wise, what is Webpack? Um, Again, Webpack is not as important, but the next one is more important. So I'm going to, but still show you what Webpack does. Um, this is what Webpack basically does. You have your handlebars library, JavaScript libraries, images. It takes all of that stuff and kind of bundles them together, okay, into static assets. That's what Webpack does, okay. This is to reduce the size, all these things, instead of all these things being passed into your browser. Webpack kind of makes some calculations, comes up with their own thing, and only 4 files are passed to your browser. Okay, easier load times. Now your website doesn't have to go through each one of them. Or remember, when somebody makes a call to your website, all the code, all your public code, everything that is in there has to travel to your browser over the internet, and then your website loads. Okay, anything that is in your public folder, you guys remember that? All your JavaScript, all your HTML, all your CSS, everything has to be downloaded into your browser before your website can actually load. Okay, now that process can be time consuming. If you have a big JavaScript, remember the minification process, the min files, they take out the spaces to reduce the size and all. Webpack is one of those tools that does that. You have all these bunch of files. It's going to reduce the package size and send this file. Now within their JS file, if you open it up, all your code, whatever they have gone through, they'll make sure everything is there. Okay, that's the purpose of Webpack. It basically bundles all your assets and then makes it compress and send it to your website. Now, React uses this a lot. Initially, again, 2 years ago, a year ago, you would have to set up, make sure how do you set up Webpack and everything. But what I'm going to show you today, it already comes bundled with it. When you deploy your website, you will see, if you go to your, we'll do an inspect in a browser, you will see your Webpack, your bundle.js is going to be there without you making any changes to your website, or you have to install anything. Okay, that's the one thing. This second thing is important. Again, the concept wise, these both are important from the concept wise. 2 years ago, you would have to set this up as well, and I have done it. It's not pleasant. You're like, well, what is it doing? I don't know what it's doing. If I change something, my whole website goes down. But now React has taken care of it. It does it for us. Okay. So remember what I was saying, that React renders on your IE browsers as well. And we understand now IE only supports ES5 version of JavaScript. It does not support ES6. Okay. So what React does is React uses this compiler, or in JavaScript terms, we call it transpiler. Okay. It's not basically a compiler. Compiler is a term for languages such as Java and C Sharp. The right term for JavaScript is transpiler. So what Babel does is it takes your JavaScript code that you have written using ES6, ES7, or ES8, the newer versions of JavaScript, and converts that code into ES5. It transpiles that code into ES5. What does this mean? Your let, your constant, your arrow functions, all of them are gone. It's going to take those things and convert into vars, regular functions. Your classes are gone, they would be converted into functions. All of that stuff Babel does for you and converts it into ES5 code. Once, so what my browser is going to receive is going to receive a JavaScript that is written in ES5. What does that mean? I'm able to load my website in Internet Explorer as well. 100% coverage if your code is written in ES5. Okay, so The second thing from this is every single thing, React, Angular, Vue.js, jQuery, you guys need to understand every single thing can be written in ES5 old school JavaScript. Okay, you can create the same framework just using JavaScript. Okay, will it be challenging? Very challenging, but it's possible. Okay, you don't need React to write a single page application. You don't need jQuery. You don't need Angular. You don't need Vue.js to write a single page application that's going to work. What we are working on, every single thing can be done in JavaScript, and the proof is Babel is actually converting all your code into vanilla JavaScript. So if Babel can do it, you can also do it. Challenging? Yes, very challenging, but it can be done. Okay, is that clear? Difficult to write, difficult to understand. Yes, you cannot use scoping issues, a lot of scoping issues. You cannot use let, you cannot use cons. It has to be var. A lot of scoping issues. You have to have some hacks, but still it can be done in JavaScript. Any questions before we move on to looking at the React app structure and all that stuff? Components, virtual DOM, what Babel is doing, how your websites, React websites, are able to load into an Internet Explorer, how you can use any of these new features and don't worry about being not able to load on a website. Does everybody understand these concepts? Any questions? No questions? I'm getting really good at this now, I think. Okay, now, one of the questions that might be, you guys might be thinking that since it's a JavaScript library, right? Why can't I use a CDN and create a React app? You can. Okay. Again, it's going to be challenging and it's going to be slow, right? Again, all the setup, if you were doing this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, let me see what it is. Okay. You were doing this, you would have to go through, you would have to start from like a blank, literally blank JavaScript file, add React components, install React components, install Webpack, install Babel, make the configuration, make sure all of that is set up, and then you would have the React app up and running. Okay? Up and running is just the basic template. Not even, you haven't even written code that you're looking for. You have just set up a React app, right? But today, again, they have improved a lot. With just one line in your terminal, they would create a running React app for you, and then you can go ahead and start making changes to it without worrying about the configuration. Okay, again, even with React, it is possible. You don't have to use what I'm going to show you. But of course, that is out of the scope of this course. But you know, later on, if you feel challenged, you want to try something, there are tutorials you can look up and see how do you create a React app from scratch without actually using the tools that they are providing. It is possible. Okay, a lot more challenging, a lot more hair pulling and effort, but it is possible. Okay, you can create a React app without actually using any of those stuff. All right. Any other questions before we move on to React? No questions? Everybody good? Understanding what's going on? Okay. All right. So here's the documentation, and I'm going to be literally following the documentation. So today my goal is to cover the installation part, show you how it is installed, and then we are going to cover first three components, first three from the documentation. Okay, we're going to create a Hello World app. We're going to talk about what JSX is. Okay, JSX is a language that comes with React. Facebook has written it. They recommend using it. It's kind of similar to HTML and JavaScript. We'll take a look at it. But JSX is something custom to React only. Okay. Again, does your browser understand JSX? It does not. It doesn't matter. Why? Because React is using Babel and it makes sure that everything is converted into ES5, so it doesn't matter what it is. Okay. So we'll take a look at these things. rendering elements. We're going to see how these components are loaded, how what are the functions, what are the methods that React is using to render those components on the screen. Okay. I'll be talking about some of the standard practices that React uses, especially the file structure. Okay. I'm going to be following a certain file structure, folder structure. Um, it's one of these two. There are a couple of options that you can pick and choose. The one that I'm going to choose is, again, that's the one I have chosen. Okay, so I'm going to create that biasness, and I'm going to show you the folder structure that I'm going to be using. It might be that you guys are going to start following the same one, but here is, it's in the documentation, the file structure. They have a couple of options. I'm going to follow the first one because I like the first one, and that's what I create my projects in. Okay, so we'll talk about the file structure, how the file structure is, but there are a few different standard practices. I would highly suggest pick one and kind of stick to it, and then when you're working somewhere, see what folder structure they are using and kind of go with that. Okay. Go back here. All right. Any questions before we will start the coding part? Are we good? Still excited or not? Okay. All right. So as I said, React has made it extremely easy. They have a tool that comes actually built in with npm. Okay, so you don't have to install anything. Once you have your Node.js, Node set up, you have your npm. All of those things are already set up for every single one of us. So you don't have to worry about this. But the command is called npx. Okay, just remember it's npx, not npm. Don't have to install anything. It's already comes bundled in with your packages. Okay, npx, and the tool is called create react app. That's the package. That's the command line tool already installed. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so you have to say npx create react create dash react dash app, and then you're going to give a name. Okay, I'm going to create an app called hello world. One thing over here, you cannot have uppercases like this. If you try to create this app, give it a try, it's going to give you an error. They follow a naming convention. It has to be lowercase. You can use hyphens or dashes, but it cannot have a camel casing like this when you're creating the name of the app. Okay, give it a try. You will see the error comes up. I'm not going to try because this setup kind of takes a while. I don't want to waste a few minutes. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we're going to call our app hello dash world. Okay, again, just convention, tradition. Every time you learn a new language, we start with the hello world program, so that's what we're going to start with. Okay, now when you start this, it takes a while. Please don't create. Let me create it first so that I'm the one who's sucking all the bandwidth. You already did it. Okay, so you will see it goes to the internet. It's downloading. It's going to it's going to download a lot of npm packages. It's going to download Webpack. It's going to download Babel. It takes a while. It takes few seconds. Okay, you see it's running. So it's going to go ahead and download and create a React app for you, but it takes few seconds before this completes. Okay, so what I recommend is for today, of course, I didn't give you a heads up. When the next class happens, what I say, what I tell the students is I slack it out and say, hey, we are going to work on like 7 activities today. So make sure at your home, create 7 React apps, and then we'll work on it. So you run this same setup like 7 times at your home, much faster internet speed, and then you don't have to wait for it. What's going on? Okay, for today, yes, we'll be doing 4 activities. You'll have to go through the setup every single time. It's going to take a time. I have cheated. This is the only app that I'm going to create, and then the rest I have already created from home. So we'll go through them. So these 2 I have already created. All I did was I did npx hello bootstrap hello jsx, and then went through this thing. That's all I did. Okay? Still going through, working. So you see, it installed 1,675 packages. Yeah. Still going on, still going strong. All right. Again, they have, it takes a bit, but they have minimized the setup a lot, right? Initially, um, again, I would recommend once you are more familiar with React, take a look at it. How would you set up React without using create React app setup? The configuration and all that stuff you have to do. But this whole thing has actually set up a complete React app. If you go to your browser, you will be able to run that. You will, so it's npx create React that app and then app. Okay, lower cases, hyphens all about it. Uppercase is not going to work, it's going to give you an error. Okay, they also have a helpful documentation. Once you install, once you create an app, they're going to tell you what to do. Okay, now npm start, does anybody remember? If I see something npm start, npm run build, npm test, are those npm commands? Remember from our project 2? No, they are not npm commands. What does this mean? Those are custom commands. And where do I find what these command means? And what? In your JSON? What JSON? Huh? Package.json. Yes, that's okay. That's what I was looking for. I know what you're saying. So all these are in your package.json. Remember that. Okay. So React is creating a package.json. It has all these custom commands. If you open your package.json file that React has created, you will see all of them. And behind the scene, you can see what each one of them are doing. Okay. For now, we will follow the instruction and we will say npm start. Oh, I need to be inside the folder. Folder is called hello world. Cd into the folder. Here it is. npm starting, and then it's going to bring up a React app. Wait for it. 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 And there it is. Okay, it's an actual running website that all of you can have that. Okay, I know it was slow, but if you look at it, they have added a note just because we guys are, oh, it's so slow. They're saying it's not optimized, but when you do a production build, they make sure it loads faster. But anyway, this is your React app. Okay, all it took was just one line of command npx create React app and an app name, and you have a working React app. Now, if you go and you upload this to Heroku, this is the actual website that is running. Okay, this is your React app. You see localhost 3000, one line, and it did everything. Okay, now it's not as simple, of course. There's a lot of, if you open this up, hello world, right, you will see node modules. If you dare to open this, you will see how many packages installed. See this? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Still going on. Still going on. And then going on. Still going on. And finally. Okay, so you see that's why it took so much time. So all these things React has found out. They have listened to the developers. They know everybody is going to need this, so they make sure that this is already installed. Now, what do you have to do when you upload submit your React homework? Make sure you check in your node modules file so that Ethan and Sam and Lee will have a good time going through the node modules. Okay, of course I'm joking. Don't check in your node modules file. It's going to be like I think it's a pretty big. It goes up to like I don't know if it goes up to a GB or not, but it's a pretty big file. Okay, so just so that we don't make any stupid mistake, they have actually included a .ignore file as well in the setup, so none of these files kind of go into your GitHub. See how considerate they are? They're already included this git ignore file. You don't even have to worry about the git ignore file. All right. Maybe somebody complained, hey, it would be nice to have a git ignore file. They're like, here you go. Don't even have to do anything. Okay. So all of this. So this we have not written a single piece of code. Okay. We have these are not customized, but this is everything you get. Okay. Go ahead. Um, run the npx command. At least create a hello world, and then we'll go through the folder structure. Okay. I'm going to suck up all the bandwidth if you haven't already done. It might be slower, so we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll go through what all has been done. Okay, so at least create one app, create React app Hello World, make sure it is running, and you should be on this page. It should show up when you npm start. Okay, and remember I was talking about npm start. If you look up package.json, there's your build that is running. Once you have the app running, do go to Chrome and do an inspect, and then go into sources, and then you will see a static file, JS, and your bundle.js. Open that up, kind of look through it. That's what Webpack is doing. It's converting all your JavaScript code into React code into ES5. So you will see vars and function names, all of these things. So it's in your, open the website, go into your inspect sources, open the static file, look into the JS file. This is all your code that is eventually going to come over here. Just one single JavaScript file, which is written in ES5. Does everyone has the app set up? Are we? What is it? Still working? Downloading? Okay. The other cool thing about this is if you have, if you did an npm start and your website comes over here, any code changes that you make, you don't have to restart the server. Just like Nodemon, it will pick up and it will refresh your website on its own. So you don't have to
Yeah.
keep restarting your app. As long as you did an npm start and you're over here, any code changes that you make is going to be reflected. It's going to reload itself. You won't see any message on the terminal, but you will see the changes on the website. We'll take a look at it. But you don't have to keep restarting your app more than once, unless it crashes. Yes. Uh, throttling your bandwidth. You're connected to UA guest, right? Okay. Yeah, so you guys can see how much time it takes. So that's why I create the apps. And the next class, I'm going to tell you guys to create some from home, and then we'll be using those. Really? Oh, I know. I think that's what Jeremy is going through. His haven't even started. He only sees one line over there. Still the same thing? Oh, what is your version of NPM? What's the Ethan? Can you check the version of NPM? It might be better to update it and then try. Because I think Stack Overflow says it might be. So I would recommend updating your NPM version to the latest one. I don't know if you guys saw my message last week. They had some security issue as well, so they are recommending anyway. So I am on 6.13.4 NPM. Kelly, did your issue work? What did you try to update the npm permissions? Permissions on. Oh, then you can do a sudo npm start. It's not. Did you try updating the npm version? Huh? Okay. It might be just the older npm version. Not sure. That's yeah. Node is updated, but we are using npm. Anybody else having issues, or is everybody able to create an app that comes up like this? Anybody try to make this rotate faster? Usually, before I begin, when I'm waiting, somebody also always finds the code to make this spin faster. Point one. It's like shaking. Did that work? It was the npm version. Hmm. Yes. What is it? What are you saying? Okay. You see on your terminal it says npm start tells you the commands. When you installed it, oh, you closed that. So go into that folder, your hello world folder, and then do a npm space start. So inside the folder, oh yeah, you made it. Chris, how did you get it spinning so fast? So which property did you have to modify for the spinning faster, Chris? Was it this one? Huh? Point three. Like 0.3?
Yeah.
Oh, the screen is going to fly away pretty soon. Now keep watching this. Everything is going to be okay. Yeah, the shaking one. All right. Damon, did you get it working? Anybody else? You guys seem confused. Not working? The what? Activity 14? Oh, no, you just have to do npx create react app and hello world. No activity. Is that that's not what you guys did? I didn't say anything about activity. I just said npx create app. Oh, so but that's still okay. Just do npx create that react app. Oh, you put it in. So what the okay. Yeah, it's running. Yeah. You want to if you do npx create react app, that's it. But if you have hello world running, that's also okay. You still fix it up.
So the address would say one way that works. I mean, is that what you mean? What I think you mean? It's looking at the address. No, like, are you actually broadcasting?
I don't think so. You can put it this way. Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, because I haven't broadcast it. Okay, as long as you are able to see this code, it should be good. Are you guys? Because we'll go through the code and then we'll start making it. Okay, looks like everybody has it working. All right, so before we start coding, let's go over the folder structure and see what, I mean, again, we haven't made any code changes. Well, I modified the CSS with your guys' help. Other than that, no coding changes. We don't have any components. So this is how the page kind of shows up. Um, one thing is, if you make any code changes, you will notice you don't have to restart the server. You don't have to do anything. Okay, it does it. Ooh, it is doing it. It is kind of like a node mod. It restarts the server. So if I go back here and change my CSS to something, you see I don't have to restart the anything. It just loads itself. Okay, but the only thing is this has to be running. You won't see any messages, you won't see anything, but it's working in the background and reloads your page with the new content. Okay, now let's start with looking at the folder structure. So we have our package.json, we have our git ignore. All right, we understand what package.json is. It has all the dependencies, and this is coming from React. Okay, any library that you install is going to be added to your package.json. For now, looks like React is using these dependencies. Okay, these are your scripts. Okay, this is your program name and version number and all that stuff. Okay, so let's look at our public folder. Public folder contains the files that are going to be exposed, that are going to travel to your browser, and that's what people will see. Okay, if you open this up, the only relevant file is index.html. These are images for the image that you see on the screen. Okay, so we'll ignore that. We'll look at index.html. This is, remember in handlebars, we used to have main.handlebars. This is what this is. Okay, your index file, index.html is the first file. There's some good comments. You can read it on your own time. But this is the one that gets loaded. Okay, but you will see there's no content in it. The only thing you need to make a note of this is this thing, div id root. Okay, it's a div tag with an ID called root. Just remember that. All right. Um, If you want to add Bootstrap, you want to add links over here, you would be adding them over here in this page. Okay, simple index HTML. Let's go close this out. Let's look at source folder. This is where all our code, where our React code resides. Okay, so there are two kind of files over here. One is called index and one is called app. Okay, before we look into app.js and index.js, let me quickly show you service worker. This is not important, but it is good to know what it is, what it is doing. If you read the comments, they have this algorithm, they have some code over here that they're saying if your bandwidth, if your internet connection is low in some different countries, this code over here kind of makes sure that your page still loads faster. That's what this is here for. Okay, so you will have this service worker.js, you can remove it, you don't need it, but they build this into it, and the reason is they have mentioned they have a whole URL over here, some research what they have done, you can read about it, but that's what service worker.js is here for. Okay, again, not as important to us, we won't ever be modifying this, it will always be there, but doesn't do anything for us. Okay, these are your logo files, you can remove them. These are all because my web page looks like this, but once you are making your websites, once you are making your projects, of course you're going to not have these, so you're going to replace it with your logo. All right, so let's come to the coding part. If you look at your index or your app files, you will see the convention. They have three different files with the same name. I have app.js, app css, and then app.test.js. Okay, now when when I'm going to make components, right, for my UI, I'm going to be following same practice over here. I'm going to create a component. I'm going to follow the same naming convention, start with an uppercase, and whatever my component name is, I'm going to have three different files: css, js, test.js. Am I going to write some code? Maybe, maybe not, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to still follow the convention, even though I'm not going to write anything in my test file, but I'm still going to create it. Why? Eventually, later on, when we learn about testing, it's kind of optional, but we can write some tests in it. But it is good to follow the standard practice and have these three files, every single component that you make. And I'm going to follow this strategy. Okay? Three files, naming convention, that's all I'm going to follow. Okay? I'm not going to put any CSS, I might not have any test cases, nothing at all, but I will make sure that these files are still there. Okay? Same in the index file. So let's start with our index file. Okay, now index.js is the first JavaScript file that is going to get loaded in your React app. Okay, open this index.js, you will see couple of import statements over here. Okay, this is another ES6 implementation. This is serves the same purpose what require does in your Node.js app. Okay, if you want to import a module in your Node.js, what do? You use the require keyword. Okay, this is the same thing in ES6. Okay, same purpose. All right. So what is going on? There are different modules that have been installed on your app, and React is importing some of those modules from these files. That's what this import is doing. Okay, it is importing components from these modules over here. Okay, that's what the import does. When we create our own component, we need at least this module, otherwise it's not going to work. So we are going to import this, but since this is created by React, so they already have this code over here. Okay, so this is how your import works in React. Again, this syntax over here is not React, it's ES6. React uses this. Okay, behind the scenes, it gets converted into ES5, whatever that is. But for now, we will be using the same syntax. Okay, importing. This is how you import any modules into a React app. All right, the next one, line number 7. This is very important. We're not going to change it, but it is important to understand from the concept wise, this is the starting point of your app. Okay, React DOM is the module that is being imported, and React DOM has a function called render. Okay, what does render do? It renders your component. Okay, remember, what does render do? Render renders your component. What does that mean? What is this? This is a component. Okay, your render function is always going to render a component. So this means the app over here, this thing over here is a component that gets loaded. Okay, now remember this thing, this is our old JavaScript thing, document.getElementById root. You guys remember where the root is coming from the HTML. Remember there was an ID. So what React does is index.js looks for the root ID in your index.html and then puts this component inside it. That's how it works. Okay. Now, what is app? App is a component. We call app as a parent component or the top level component or a first component. Every other component is going to be a child of this component. So all your apps are going to start with the root component, which will be called app, and then everything is going to be inside it. Okay, now do I have to name this component app? I don't have to, but if you change the name over here, you'll have to change few things everywhere else. Okay, so let's move on to our component. So let's look at our app component. Okay, so as I mentioned, index.js starts, renders your components, the main component app, which already comes built in with it. If you want to change this name, you'll have to change all these names over here and the code inside it. But usually we don't do it, so we'll keep it as this one. But remember, your app component is the parent component. All your components are going to be child components of your app. Okay, there is no coding required, no changes required over here yet. So we are not going to change index.js at all for now. Okay, but understand that render is a function, comes with React DOM, renders your component. It takes this component and puts it inside this thing. Okay, and where is this ID? This is in your index.html. So your index.html gets loaded with this app component. Okay, any questions? Everybody understand how the flow is working? Okay, so let's look at our app components. We're going to close it. We're not going to modify. We don't have to worry about index.js. What we have to worry about is our components. So let's look at our first component. This is how you define a component. Okay, this is technical term. This is called a functional component. Okay, why do we call this functional component? Because of this keyword function over here. This is a function. Okay, any component that is declared as a function is called a functional component. Yes, there's a second type of component we'll take a look at next time. For now, this is the component. This is how we would define our components. Okay, so what are the requirements for a component? The only import that you need for a component is this thing: import React from React. Okay, any component that you're creating, this is the required. So you have to import this module. Okay, and then you would create your component by saying function, give it a name, okay, and then the function body. And then towards the end, you would have this line export default app. Why is this required? Because I'm going to be using this component in my index.js. So you're importing this. If you don't put an export, you will not be able to import this and it's not going to work. Okay. By practice, all your components are going to have export default because once you create your components, you want these components to be used somewhere. Okay, so they have to be imported somewhere. So that's why you need this export default app. Okay, I'm going to create a component hello world and then I'm going to put it inside our app. Okay, the last thing is inside your, when you define your component, it is going to have a return statement and is going to have something that looks like HTML to you. Okay. One more time. Import. Go ahead and create a function. Give it a name. Follow the same practices. Make sure there's an export default, and your function component has a return statement that has something that looks like HTML. Okay. So this, what you're looking at, looks like HTML, but it is not. It is what React custom made language. It is called JSX. Okay. Now, a lot of people say JSX looks like HTML or is HTML, but if you read React's documentation, they say that JSX is closer to JavaScript than HTML. Now, I find it really hard to believe. It looks like HTML to me, but that's what they say. They say that it looks like HTML, but it is more closer to JavaScript than HTML. But we won't worry about that. Okay, we'll see what it is. So this is the syntax. Looks like HTML. We'll take a look at it. We'll see what it all does. But now, if you look at this app component, if you open this up, you will see there's a logo. There's a p tag just like HTML, and that's where the code is coming from over here. Okay, if you see this edit source app, this is actually over here. So if you go ahead and change, if I go ahead and change this and say hello world, what happens? My page loads and there's my hello world. My app component changed. Okay, faster load. This is the only change that happened, and your page should be changing now. So wherever you have the text, you can go ahead and update it, and you will see that the change happens. Okay, any questions so far? Everybody understand index.js and app.js? Okay, so we're going to remove this code, but before that, let's go ahead and create a component on our own and get into the habit and see how we would do that. Okay, so I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go back over here in my source. By standard, if I'm creating components that are not parent components, app is already there, so I don't have to worry about it. What I do is I create a folder within my source folder, call it components, and all my components are inside this. This tells me that these are the components that I'm creating. I have not changing anything with what React came with. These are the components that I'm creating. So I create a folder and all my components go inside this folder. Okay, so I'm going to create a component called hello. Okay, so inside my components folder, I'll create another folder called hello. I know it looks like too much folder. Again, if you don't like it, here is the documentation. I will highly recommend using the file structure. Go into FAQ, look at the file structure. Okay, they recommend is do not spend more than 5 minutes in coming up with your folder structure. Just go with what you think is. Now, what I say is, how would you know what is the right folder structure for you? Comes with practice. You will create more and more React apps. Eventually, you will be like, okay, you know what? This is how I like it. This is how it should be. And you will come up with a folder structure. I came up with this, reading articles, reading the FAQs, and making applications. And I'm like, okay, you know what? This is what I like. This makes more sense to me. Logical, organized, and that's why I'm doing this. Okay, so I have folder called components. My component, I'm going to create a component called hello. So I created a folder hello with all lowercase. Okay, the next is I'm going to create 3 files inside my hello folder, hello component, which are going to be hello.css, hello.js, and hello.test.js. Naming following the same naming convention as app component. Okay, so I'm going to say hello.css. I'm going to say hello.js uppercase. Okay, and then I'm going to say hello.test.js. Am I going to be changing test.js? No, I'm not going to be doing any coding over here, but I'm following the standard practice, making sure these 3 files are there. Again, it's good practice. Maybe later on somebody is working on this program, they want to add a test, the file is there. Okay, but we are not going to worry about this. So I have my components now. Within my component, I have a single component called hello. Okay, and I have a CSS, JS, and test file. We won't worry about CSS. We'll start with our hello.js. Okay. If you want, you can open up app.js as a reference, and we'll be kind of following the same strategy that they have over here. Okay. The first thing I need is import React. So I'm going to say import React from React. Okay. Next thing you see, they're importing their CSS. I don't need the logo. They are importing their CSS file. I'll do the same thing since I do have a CSS file. So I'll say import and then /hello.css. Okay, these two things are done. The next thing is definition of the function. So I'm going to say function, give it a name as my file name. I'm going to say hello. Okay, parameters for now empty. Okay, it should have a return statement. For now empty. Stub it out. Last thing I need is the export. So export default hello. Okay, my component is done. I've stubbed it out. Every time you make a component, highly recommended follow this stubbing out. First stub it out and then worry about what code you have to write in your. All the code is going to go over here for now. So this is how you do it. Okay, create a component, file, folder, 3 files. Start with import the CSS file, create a function component, create a function, okay, and then export that function. Okay, any questions so far? Yes. Well, again, I hate it, but I'm trying to train myself because they're using single quotes. I'm using single quotes in the import declaration for now. Yes, yes, it can be replaced with double quotes. If you want double quotes, do double quotes, but be consistent. Okay, this is better than having one single quote and one double quote. So pick one. For easiness, since everything is they're using single quotes, I'm going to kind of stick with single quote in my import definition. I'm not going to change my strings and all. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and use JSX. Okay. Now JSX works like HTML and JavaScript. The only thing is, so let's go ahead and create a div tag. Okay. So all your app components have to have a parent tag. Okay, what do I mean by this? You see a div tag over here. This is good. What you cannot do is you cannot do this. You cannot have a sibling div tag. This is going to give you an error. We'll see, we'll put it in and we'll make sure it's not running. All your code, all your JSX code has to go inside a parent tag. Parent tag, I'm not saying parent div tag or parent p tag. Any tag is fine. But it has to have a parent tag. Okay, you cannot have two tags like this. It's not going to work. It's going to give you a syntax error. Is that clear? Yes. Every component. Every component. Okay, you cannot have a sibling. All your code, yes, it has to have a main tag. Within that, siblings, whatever you want. But make sure there's a parent tag. There's no tag after this. Okay, all the code I'm going to write is going to be inside this. Okay, a single parent tag, and that's what your return statement should have. Okay, for example, I need a header, so you can go ahead and say h1. This is header h1. You can have h2 sibling tag. This is okay. The only thing is everything has to be inside this parent tag. This is h2. Okay. You can have your unordered list. Let's say things to do. Event. just like your HTML. Looks like HTML, but this is JSX. Right now, you don't see a differentiation. We'll look at some of the things that are a little bit different, but treat this for now just like your simple HTML. Okay? The only thing is, all of these things, all your component code, it has to be inside a single parent tag. Okay? This is done, your component is ready. But it doesn't render on your page. Okay? Still the same thing. So what do we have to do? We have to modify our app.js. Why do we have to modify our app.js? Index is loading app, okay? And my app should load my hello component. This is the missing link. Okay? So let's go ahead and modify our app code. So I don't need any of these. I'm going to remove all of this because I don't need I'm going to modify my app component. This is fine. I don't need the logos. I'm going to remove this also. Okay, what do I need? I need to load my hello module. So I'm going to import hello from dot slash, it's inside components, inside hello slash hello. Okay, now this follows the same strategy. All your components have to be inside a parent. You cannot have siblings. For now we only have one component, so I'm just going to load hello. So I'm going to say load my hello component. Either you can do this, or you guys know from HTML you can have a closing tag. Generally you will see something like this. Okay, now if this is working correctly, you should see your hello component being loaded on your screen. Mind blown yet or not? Here's a hard crowd, please. Okay, is it, everybody got that working? Do they have their hello component loading? So this is a basic component. This is how you load your components. How do you create your components? Again, what I do is I create a folder called components, and then I have my component, whatever the name that is. Within that my component, I'm going to create 3 files: CSS, test, and JS. In your JS file, you're going to create your component, okay, which is going to be a functional component. Now here's the thing, I'm using the function keyword. I can use ES6. Can I convert this into arrow function? Yeah, why not? I mean, it's still JavaScript, so remove this. Oops. This would be, let's say, cons hello. Okay. Arrow function. Sorry. Equal to arrow function. No arguments. Will this work? Yeah, it will. Still ES6. You can convert this into arrow function. Okay. Now I'm going to be using arrow functions for all my components. Okay, so we convert this into our arrow function. We are loading our hello CSS, so we can go to our CSS and add some CSS as well. For example, let me create a class, just header. Okay, let's add some background. Give it a, I don't know, you guys are better than in CSS than me, so let's add height. Okay, now go back to your hello component. How do we import the CSS? It's already being imported, remember, so I don't have to worry about it. I can use the class name now and have my CSS loaded. Okay, let's put our CSS over here. class header. Okay. Okay. Now, the only syntax difference that you see over here, instead of class, I use the word class name. This is coming from JSX, okay? They don't use the word class. So make sure if you are importing, if you are using CSS classes, it has to be class uppercase name, okay? Class name is reserved for your HTML. And if you look at the documentation, React says if you're using code in JSX, which we are, please make sure you use the JSS component. One of the difference is the class name. It has to be this thing, class uppercase name. Remember that. Okay.
What happens?
For now, it's not, but there could be a clash when you have a HTML class. Let's look at our. You see this thing over here, so it's not able to recognize that. That's there. It's loading because it is HTML and it does something, but you're going to keep getting this error in your browser. Okay. So make sure this is not class, it is class name. Okay, so this is how you will load your CSS, and you can add your CSS to your components, and this is how it would come out. Let me go back over here. Okay, any questions? So right now, we'll take a lunch break, but right now we just created a component, a simple single component. Of course, my app is not going to have a single component. After lunch, we will look at creating multiple components. CSS, I hate CSS, so we'll take a look at Bootstrap. How do we incorporate I was going to say Bootstrap into our app. Okay, it's not Bootcamp. I love Bootstrap. I hate CSS. Okay, so we're going to see how do we incorporate Bootstrap, but this is how you do CSS. Okay, now one thing before you guys leave, in your activities, you will see CSS being done inline. Please don't do it. I hate it. Don't do it. Follow this thing. This is good practice. Make sure you have a separate CSS file. If you have a custom CSS file, this is how you load it. Okay. There are ways, I will not even go into it, right? It's inline CSS. Some of the activities are solved with that. Don't do it. Okay? This is how you do it. Better way. All right, let's take a lunch break. We'll start at 12:45 and we'll look at Bootstrap and multiple components.